Okay, everyone, it's time for our weekly recap for our call option selling series. And this is the week of March 2nd to the 6th. And what a heck of a comeback this week. I mean, we were down so much, but yeah, things turned up in the positive. And let me explain a little bit more. You can see in the spreadsheet here, we had two trades. One was Coinbase, which was the story of the week, and Marvell. So Coinbase, we opened two contracts at the beginning of the week, $200 strike price and 215 per contract. And at that time, it was like at around 180-ish. And so it was deep into the money eventually because of Trump chimed in about the whole Clarity Act deal that bill has not been passed yet and it's been a battle between the crypto parties versus the traditional banks. And at the end of the week, we made 354. And then on Friday, today, March 6th, we made one trade for Marvell. Marvell popped really hard. It was up 20 some percent in Friday, and the premiums were still good. You know, it was at about over $92, and we sold five contracts at $1.02 at $95 strike price. And we let that go to the expiration. And yeah, cha-ching, $510 in a few hours, and the week was good for $864, positive territory, 2 for 2 trade. So yeah, beginning of March, we're off to a decent start, $864. Didn't do too many trades, but we were definitely good and profitable. So let me talk a little bit more about what happened with Coinbase for those tuning in. On Monday, we Coinbase popped. You know, Bitcoin was like going up, and then it was from the 170 level to 180-ish, and we sold two contracts there, and with a good amount of delta because the implied volatility for Coinbase is pretty relatively high, and so I thought 200 would be good enough. But then, you know, the next day, or not the next day, 2 days later, Trump jumped in. You know, he talked to Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, and then he tweeted out how the bank should give up their position so that the Clarity Act bill can pass. And when the Clarity Act bill passes, then staking would be allowed for the crypto exchanges like Coinbase, and thus people who have crypto can earn significant good percentage on their crypto holdings, and would be higher than, like, you know, your traditional deposit for savings, checking, and traditional bank. And the banks are worried about this because if everybody pulled out their money, then they can't hand out loans, you know, and the crypto people are winning. And their other argument is that, you know, the crypto guys aren't held to the same tight regulation as they are. So it's kind of, they're calling definitely foul on this. So this battle is going to drag out, but definitely the president had some influence on this. And also, you know, Bitcoin was also jumping back up there. So yeah, the height was like around, I think it was around 214-ish. And yeah, at 214, you know, we were steep into the money, and we're down like almost like $3,000 on those like two contracts that we sold. But sure enough, you know, everything came back down, everything cooled off, and it stayed out of the money on Friday. It fell today because of the, I guess, more uncertainty about the war, and people probably want to sell off before holding anything in the weekend, and so it stayed below the 200 level. And we sold it off at 38 cents per contract so that we can move to Marvell. Marvell had a fantastic quarter. I mean, AI is going really well for them for the data center, networking chips and switching chips. It's doing really good for them, and so they're guiding up. They got acceleration. Their stock jumped really well, and during the middle of the day when it was like at 92-ish, you know, the premiums for a strike price of 95 was at over $1. So we sold 5 contracts. We moved from Coinbase into Marvell, and that's what happened. And of course, at the end of the day, you can see here also the Nasdaq is down 1.59% because probably factors related to the war, where there's probably a sell-off due to not wanting to have an uncertainty in your holdings going into the weekend, given the Iran war. All right, yeah. So that's kind of like, that's the wrap up for this week. So we're profitable, we're successful, and yeah, I think Coinbase may be one of, you know, if pops again early in the week because there's some excitement about Bitcoin bouncing back, and also like general markets. Guess maybe seeing the war winding down, and I'm not a specialist about that, but if that happens on early on the week, it goes up. Maybe we consider selling more contracts on Coinbase. I think it's potentially lucrative, obviously high risk. That's just how it is. The higher the risk, the higher potential payout. But I think Coinbase would be a good. It's definitely still one of the targets on the table. Aside from that, yeah, selling call options seem to be the way to go because stock selection is just really tricky. And one other thing, I guess, before we go, since like here's what I'm talking about tricky. Things like Micron. Micron today is down almost 7%, and at one point other stocks were earlier in the day. I know a lot of things just like nosedived at the end, but even then it was down earlier in the day. It was down several points around 390-ish, and then it continued to go further down, down to low and mid 380s, and eventually, plummeted up down to 370. And Micron's definitely a hot stock. It's going to report earnings on March 18th. Marvell had a great quarter. Broadcom had a great quarter, and even those two stocks could not continue to, how you say, allow Micron to levitate a little bit higher. And I guess there was also some analysts recently in this week that upped their rating. Oh, here's two of them. One of them is UBS. They upped their rating to 450 to 475 on their price target. And also Stifel, 360 to 550. But, analysts' price targets sometimes just mean nothing. They don't have that much weight. But my point is, Micron, one of the hottest stocks around, I'm a little surprised that it's down so much today. And I guess before we sign up, maybe we can talk a little bit more about one more stock. One that I'm kind of interested in, MongoDB, MDB. Here we go. Doing databases, their cloud services growth was a little bit underwhelming after they report earnings and the stock dove. And so, but what's interestingly is, so here it is. It went from 330 all the way down to 230 something, 238 here, to maybe even lower, 235. And then I think RBC Capital upgraded it to a buy, saying that the price is kind of appealing, and it's popped all the way back to 270. Basically the problem with MongoDB is their forecast was a little bit underwhelming for 2027. Their upcoming now that they're moving to this fiscal year of 2027, not to confuse that with the actual year of we're in 2026. So yeah, in their fiscal year, it's just the forecast was underwhelming. But the CEO said that right now, not a lot of the revenue is attributed to customers spending for AI. So they're kind of like in the early stages, which is kind of like a little surprising, because you would think at this point you would have customers, developing applications, and if they're using a database, like especially like MongoDB's database, where there's certain advantages to it, that you would see some customers like having, paying for adding to your revenue basically. But apparently not. So the forecast does not have any AI revenue baked into it. But the CEO said, hey, if any AI revenue should show up, which they anticipate, their gut feeling is they do. Who knows if it's true or not? If there is, then they would just help lift their revenue significantly. So there's that potential. But because they can't actually say it in their forecast and with their numbers that they have provided, their stock tanked a lot. But then now it's kind of like rebounding. You can see, the past few days it's just bounced. I think yesterday it bounced like almost like 7% or something like that, 6%. So anyways, interesting stock. I don't know if want to add it to the buying selling series portfolio, but something to think about. Okay, that's all I have for you this week. I guess with the war going on, everything going sideways, selling call options is kind of nice still. But lesson learned here, yeah, doing call options on Coinbase, you got some of these factors sometimes catch you off guard. You catch some bad beats, like things like people all of a sudden one day getting excited about cryptocurrency again, or the president coming in and saying something, or some factor like that artificially drives the stock in a certain way and might work against you in the short term. And here we're selling contracts for weekly contracts, and yeah, you get potentially get caught up in the crossfire here. All right, yep, that's all I have for you tonight. Now, don't forget to like this video if you like money and you like this video. All right, catch you this upcoming trading week.